Okay, your English teacher for grade 9. Thank you for joining me and let's get started. Okay, so today we'll be finalizing poem analysis. We started with this last week. We did it for 2 days. We learned about poem analysis and there was a poem that we did together. And so today we're basically touching up on those and summarizing the whole lesson. And also I'll be answering Ashley's question. I'm not sure if she's here, but she asked an important question that I think will benefit everyone. Okay. All right, so by the end of this lesson, you will learn to identify structural elements of poems. You will learn to use the correct terminology. You will learn to explore and explain key features of text and how they contribute to meaning, okay? And finally, you will learn to recognize that words and punctuation affect meaning, okay? Okay, so you have been doing poetry in primary school and you have done it in grade 8 as well. And you will probably do it until matric. So what is poetry? You have been doing these poems and what is it? Why are you doing poetry? What is poetry? Okay. So it all comes down to poetry being spoken or written words and stanzas that express ideas, experiences, feelings, or emotions. Okay. So it's spoken or written words and stanzas that express ideas, experiences, feelings, or emotions in a figurative or imaginative style. Okay. So those spoken or written words that you see in poetry, they are written in a figurative or imaginative style, okay? We will still explain the figurative side of things, okay? Right. So we do poetry to broaden our knowledge base, to make critical textual connections, and to increase our understanding of text, okay? So we read it and analyze poetry to broaden our knowledge base. And also there are other benefits with doing poetry, such as that it allows you to explore the English language and your vocabulary as well. It also encourages creative and critical thinking. Okay. Okay, so last week we spoke about poem analysis and we said poem analysis is the process of breaking the poem down into important parts, okay, and explaining how they work together to create an effect or meaning, okay. So those important parts or elements are form, title, figurative language, sorry, mood and tone, the theme, and the speaker. Okay, so we said poem analysis is the process of breaking the poem down into important elements and explaining how they work together to create an effect or meaning. Okay, and we said those important elements are form, as you can see on your screen, title, figurative language, mood and tone, theme, and the speaker, okay? So you can call them poetry elements or you can just call them the key features of poetry, okay? As long as you'll be able to remember them. Right. So we did a poem last week that's called The Twins by Henry Astley. So throughout the lesson, I will be using examples from that poem, okay? Right, so we spoke of form or genre, whatever word you prefer to use, and we said it is the physical structure of the poem, okay? So we defined form as the physical structure of the poem, such as the length of the lines, the rhythm, and the repetition, okay? So the physical structure of the poem is made up of stanzas or what you call verses, okay? So stanzas or verses are a group of lines in a poem that go together. They are more like a paragraph in a poem, but you can't use the word paragraph when you are talking about poetry. You have to say stanzas or verses, okay? Because it is very important for you to use the correct terms when you are doing poetry, so that even the person who will be marking your work, they know which stanza you are talking about, okay? Right. Okay. For an example, on this poem, The Twins, how many stanzas do you see here? How many stanzas or verses do you see in front of you? You can just type your answer on our chat box. But I would be expecting everybody to say that they see 4 stanzas, okay? You don't say you see 4 paragraphs, it's 4 stanzas. So you need to use terms for poetry. Right. Okay. Going back, what else do you notice about this poem besides the stanzas? There are words that are highlighted. What would you say regarding those words that are highlighted? So you'd say the poem has 4 stanzas and it has what? You are describing the form of the poem. Remember, let me just go back a bit. We said the form is the physical structure of the poem, such as the length of the lines, the rhythm, the rhyme, and repetition. So what else can you say about the poem that you have in front of you? What is it that you are noticing about it? Yes, I see. Yeah, a lot of you guys have the correct answer. It has the rhyme scheme, okay? The poem has a rhyme scheme because of the similar sound that is repeated at the end of the lines. Or you can say the poem has a rhyme scheme because of the matching up of sounds and syllables at the end of the lines, okay? As you can see that limb and him, they rhyme together, brother and another together, pitch and witch together, kin and twin together, and a whole lot of them, okay? All right. So as you can see, whenever you are looking at the form, you need to look at the stanzas as well as the rhythm or the repetition, okay? You need to say something about those things, right? So the other thing that we spoke about last week was the title. I'm sure everybody remembers what we said about the title. We said that it often provides important clues about the poem. So you need to always think about the title and how it relates to the poem, right? And we said that the title of the poem, The Twins, indeed, the poet Henry talks about suffering because of the resemblance with his twin. So as the title said, the twins, when you read the poem, it was actually about the twins, their experiences. One of the twins was the speaker of the poem, and he spoke about his experiences as a twin and how that affected him, okay? So sometimes the title, it's just quite obvious, and it is exactly about the poem, sometimes exactly about the title, okay? It's not always the case though. Other poems, the title, it comes from the message that is being conveyed, okay? But with this specific poem, the title, it was exactly about what you were going to read about, which was the twins, right? Okay, and then we spoke about the figurative language, okay? We said the figurative language, it is language that is used in a non-literal form to emphasize, to exaggerate, can be used for humor or to create a vivid picture, okay? So we also said that the figurative language is made up of figures of speech, your alliteration, assonance, idioms, similes, metaphors, and more. As you can see on your screen, that there's actually a whole lot of figures of speech, okay? So you don't need to stress about knowing all of them now. You'll get to know them as you do poetry and according to your grade level, okay? So you don't have to stress about them, like knowing all of them as you do more of poetry and as you get to other grades, you will get to learn more about the figures of speech. But I'm sure you do know the most popular ones. Okay, so from the poem that we did, which is The Twins, we said alliteration happens when words that start with the same letter and sound are used repeatedly in a phrase or sentence, okay? And then we had these lines. I think they were from the first stanza from the poem. Form, and feature, face. So they start with the same letter and they have a similar sound as well. And then we have Keith and Keen, buried and brother. Okay, so these are the figures of speech that we had identified from the poem that we did last week, which is The Twins. Okay, we also identified assonance, which takes place when two or more words close to one another repeat the same vowel sound. Okay, so E, the sound is repeated in C, decree, and me. Okay, they don't have the exact same letters, but the vowel sound is the same. Okay, as you can see, me doesn't have double E, but C and decree they do, but they all sound the same. Okay. All right, and then we also identified a hyperbole, and we said it is an exaggeration for the sake of emphasis, humor, or effects. And with our poem, it was used for humor, okay? These lines, they were coming from the last stanza, okay? So this one says, but somehow my intended bride became my brother's wife, okay? And when I died, the neighbors came and buried Brother John. Okay, as we can see here that the poet exaggerates. All of the above would not happen in real life because after a while, people are able to tell twins apart based on their personalities and perhaps other body features that might be different. Okay, so people wouldn't bury a person who's alive because of a mistaken identity. As you can see from the lines again, he says that, and when I died, the neighbors came and buried Brother John. So that would mean that instead of the neighbors burying the brother that is dead, they buried him because they look alike. And that is just not possible burying somebody who's alive, okay? And also, if Henry, the one who wrote the poem, was dead, he wouldn't be able to have, written this poem for us to hear, right? So I hope we get the point of the hyperbole in this in these lines that I've just read, okay? Okay, now let's talk about the tone and mood. As I said last week, that a lot of learners tend to be confused by the two, okay? So Ashley asked a very interesting question last week. You said, if you feel a certain way about the mood of the poem, is it wrong to write the way you feel? So I just want you guys to let me know quickly on our chat box. If you feel a certain way about the mood of the poem, is it wrong to write the way you feel? So you can just respond in our chat box. Is it wrong to write the way you feel? Guys, how would you answer this question? If you feel a certain way about the mood of the poem, is it wrong to write the way you feel? I said you can type your responses on our chat. Okay, nobody is ready to answer. Okay, I think. Okay, I see someone saying no. Somebody said yes because the teacher might not have the same answer. I see maybe. Yes, yes. Okay, so let's read the question again. If you feel a certain way about the mood of the poem, is it wrong to write the way you feel? The answer is it is not wrong. Okay, I saw someone saying that it is wrong because your answer might not be the same as the teacher. Okay, so you need to be able to analyze poetry and have your own answers. Okay, your answer doesn't have to be the same as the teacher. Okay, the reason why you do poetry, as we had said earlier on, is for you to develop creative and critical thinking skills, okay? For you to come up with your own answers and for you to be able to support your answers, okay? So don't depend on the teacher's answers. You need to learn to be able to read the poem and be able to explain what you've read. And as long as you're able to support your answer, okay? Let's just talk about this quickly. All right, so if you were on our lesson last week, we said the tone is the writer or the speaker's attitude towards the subject, audience, or characters. Okay, so the tone, when you are looking for the tone of the poem, um, you look at the writer or the speaker's attitude towards the subject, audience, or characters, okay? But then again, the question is, how do you do that, right? So, normally, the speaker's attitude towards the subject or the characters, it is conveyed through the choice of words and punctuation, okay? So you are able to identify the tone of the speaker through the words that they use or even the punctuation that is visible. Okay. For an example, with punctuation, an exclamation mark may show shock, anger, or a surprise. Okay. And a comma, like if you're reading a poem and there's like so many commas, they may create a soft pause whenever you are reading. Okay. And then with the choice of words, okay, an example would be if you are saying that the tone, it's admiring, okay, you would say that because you came across words such as respect, commend, applaud, and appreciate, okay. And then if you were to say the tone is depressing, you would say that because as you were reading, the writer used words such as hopeless, sadness, struggles, and setback. Okay. And if you said the tone is loving, it's because you came across words such as care, concern, affectionate. Okay. And with the words that you see, you also need to look at the punctuation as well. Okay. That is your full stops, your commas, and your question marks, like how they have been used. Right. So when you are looking at the tone, you are just focusing on what you are focusing on the writer or the speaker, okay? And you are doing that by paying attention to the choice of words that have been used as well as the punctuation, okay? Right. Now that we've got that, now let's focus on the mood. And I'll again, after doing the section of the mood, I'll ask you the question that I had asked you before regarding writing how you feel when it comes to the mood. Okay. All right. Okay, we'll come back to here. Just do this quickly. All right. Okay, I think I'll give you guys this one to try out. These are two stanzas that come from the poem that we read last week, which is The Twins. So I'll just read the two stanzas and then you guys are going to let me know the tone of this of these two stanzas. Okay. Okay, so this fatal likeness even dogged my footsteps when at school. And I was always getting flogged, for John turned out a fool. I put this question hopelessly to everyone I knew. What would you do if you were me, to prove that you were you? Our close resemblance turned the tide of my domestic life, for somehow my intended bride became my brother's wife. In short, year after year, the same absurd mistake went on. And when I died, the neighbors came and buried Brother John. Okay. So from these two stanzas, what would you say the tone is here? And I will need you to be able to support your answer. You can raise your hand if you want to give it a shot. Okay. I see Ashley has raised her hand. Okay. Can we please unmute Ashley? Can we unmute Ashley? Okay, I don't know what is happening, but we will have a discussion a bit later on. In the meantime, let me just check your helplessness, despair would be the tone. I don't think so. I don't think so. I'm gonna read these two stanzas again, and I want you guys to listen carefully, okay? Okay. This fatal likeness even dogged my footsteps when at school, and I was always getting flogged, for John turned out a fool. I put this question hopelessly to everyone I knew. What would you do if you were me, to prove that you were you? Our close resemblance turned the tide of my domestic life, for somehow my intended bride became my brother's wife. In short, year after year, the same absurd mistakes went on. And when I died, the neighbors came and buried Brother John. Okay, so the tone, let me just read the responses quickly. He feels defeated, degraded. The tone is depressing because the author uses words that's okay, guys. As much as you are looking at the words that are being used when you are looking at the tone, remember in poetry we use figurative language. Okay, so the speaker has used some figures of speech. Okay, just because you saw hopelessness, it doesn't really mean that the mood, no, sorry, that the tone is depressing. Look at these two stanzas again. Just look at them again. And especially the final stanza and the last 4 lines on the final stanza. It says, in short, year after year, the same absurd mistakes went on. And when I died, the neighbors came and buried Brother John. And when I died, the neighbors came and buried Brother John. So remember, I said look at the figures of speech that have been used as well. Okay. So the tone here, we would say it is light-hearted, it is humorous, it is playful. It has nothing to do with depression and being defeated. The reason why it is light-hearted or humorous or even playful, the speaker makes fun of the relationship between his brother and himself. And he is doing that by using a hyperbole. Hyperbole has been used throughout the poem, okay? He makes fun of his brother's mistakes at school, okay? So I don't think we read the other 2 stanzas before the last 2 ones that we read, okay? So he even suggests that his brother married his intended bride. Okay, like a person who is your brother, especially your twin, would never marry your girlfriend or marry somebody that was supposed to be married to you. That is just a lie on its own. Okay, and finally, the speaker claims that when himself died, his brother was buried. This is all in fun because he wouldn't be able to recite the poem if he was dead. Okay, let me just go back and show you guys the poem. Okay. So as we said, the poem, it's called The Twins. So one of the twins is the speaker of this poem, okay? So he is talking about his experiences as a twin, how he would get blamed for his brother's mistake. But when he is doing this, he is doing it in humor. He is using hyperbole to make it funny. He even calls his brother a fool. I'm just looking for that. There he goes. And I was always getting flogged for John turned out a fool. So this is not somebody who is depressed. This is someone who is just sharing their experiences about being a twin and how he and his experiences with being a twin and how he always got into trouble or always got the end of the stick because of his brother. Okay, so he's making it seem as if like the good benefits of being the twin only worked out for his brother and they didn't really work out for him because throughout the entire poem he is constantly talking about his misfortunes of being a twin, especially guys the final stanza. For somehow my intended bride became my brother's wife. Just think about that. Have you ever heard about think about it from your own family members? If you have twins in your family, has it ever happened that the other twin married the other twin's girlfriend or boyfriend? Okay, so this poem is very light-hearted. It is actually quite funny. And for those who were here last week you would know because we read the poem and we analyzed it. Today, we are not doing that. We are just focusing on highlighting the important things and just summarizing the whole entire thing of poem analysis. Okay. So now, do you guys get the humor in the poem? You wouldn't be able to tell the story that when you died, people came and buried your brother. So do you guys see the exaggeration and humor in that? Okay, I can't dwell on this because we are going to run out of time. Okay. Okay, so we had already spoke about these. We were still talking about the tone, okay? So the tone for the previous stanzas that I showed you guys would be lighthearted, humorous, or playful, okay? Because the speaker makes fun of the relationship between his brother and himself. He makes fun of his brother's mistakes at school by attributing them to foolishness and blaming his brother for when he got caned. He even suggests that his brother married his intended bride. And finally, the speaker claims that when himself died, his brother was buried. Okay, this is all in fun because he wouldn't be able to recite the poem if he was dead. Okay, please make sure that you understand that part. And this is where hyperbole comes in. Um, you know, his brother marrying his intended bride and him dying, but yet his brother was buried. This is just exaggerated, way exaggerated. And when something is exaggerated to this level, we know that it is a hyperbole. That's the figure of speech that describes this type of exaggeration, okay? All right, so the mood. We said the mood is how we are made to feel as readers or the emotion evoked by the writer. Okay. So poems, guys, are supposed to draw feelings out of the reader. So when you're doing a poem, whether it's with me or it's with your teacher at school, um, supposedly you need to feel something from that poem you're reading. It doesn't matter the feeling that you're feeling, but poems are meant to draw feelings out of the reader, okay? So they are not meant to draw feelings that are felt by your teacher, feelings that are felt by your friend, but feelings that are felt by you as the reader as you are reading the poem, okay? So I'm just trying to correct the person who said earlier on that when it comes to mood, your answer, it has to be the same as the teacher's answer. No. Mood is all about how we are made to feel as writers or the emotion evoked. Sorry, mood is how we are made to feel as readers and the emotion evoked by the writer, okay? So poems are there to draw feelings out of us, okay? So it depends the mood. It can be cheerful, can be frightening, can be romantic. Um, it's all about what you feel as you are reading the poem, and that goes for short stories as well. Um, yeah, that goes for poetry, short stories, or anything that you do in literature. Tone is about the writer or the speaker, then mood is about you as the reader, okay? If there's anything that you should remember is that the tone, it's about the writer or the speaker, okay? And then the mood is about you as the reader, okay? All right. So the tone, it has nothing to do with you as the reader. And then mood, it has everything to do with you as the reader, okay? All right. So with the poem that we have just spoke about, the twins, for me, I would say the mood, it is cheerful because there's laughter while reading the poem, and the repeated use of hyperbole, it makes it very light-hearted. Okay. All right. So we spoke about the theme as well, that the theme of the poem it relates to a universal truth, issue, or conflict. And to determine the theme, you need to look at your overall analysis. So everything that you've just identified from your poem, and then you connect those dots, and then you find your theme there. Okay. And then we finally spoke about the speaker. So when you are being asked, like in your exams or a test, or even an exercise, who tells the poem, okay? You are being asked about the speaker. The speaker, normally it's just the person who write the poem, but it differs with some poems, okay? Right, so I just want us to go back from, sorry, just want us to go back from the question that Ashley asked, okay? And hopefully she can answer it herself now. The question was, if you feel a certain way about the mood of the poem, is it wrong to write the way you feel? Okay. So I want you guys to answer the question on our chat box and say your reason why. If you're saying it's wrong to write the way you feel, you will say yes, it is wrong, and then you will state why. Okay. So I'll be reading your comments so that if there's anything that I need to explain now, I can be able to do so. So can tone be exaggeration too? I'm not sure if I understand this question. I don't think you can just say the tone, it's an exaggeration. Okay, I see someone saying that. No, it is not wrong. Okay, I need to read that again. No, because mood is how we feel about the poem, so it shouldn't be wrong. Okay, that's correct. Yeah, I see. So Ashley Mavangu, I'm assuming you were the one who asked the question last week. Okay, so the main thing is that you need to remember that tone, it has nothing to do with you as the reader, and everything to do with the writer of the poem, okay? And remember, we said we are able to identify tone through punctuation, the use of words, and the figures of speech as well. Guys, it's very important to look at the figures of speech that are being used as well, okay, and what they mean, right? And then with mood, it has everything to do with you, how you feel, like while you are reading the poem, how it's making you feel. So, how it's making you feel, that is the mood of the poem, okay? So it is not wrong to write how you feel, okay? It's very correct to write how you feel, because the mood has everything to do with how you feel, okay? So when you're doing poetry, don't just expect for answers to come from the teacher, okay? You need to learn to be able to read poetry and be able to use the tools that I have just given you in analyzing poetry, okay? So remember, let's just go over the tools again. Sorry. So remember, I said when you are analyzing poetry, you look at the form. You look at the form, and we said the form is the physical structure of the poem. Okay, the physical structure of the poem. That is your the length of the lines, the rhythm, the rhyme, and repetition. Okay, and then you look at the title. Okay, after looking at the title, you read the poem, and you ask yourself, or you start thinking, how does the title relate to the actual poem, right? Okay. And then from there on, you look at the figurative language, that is your figures of speech. Okay. And then from there on, you look at the mood and tone. Okay. So you can't just jump to the mood and tone before you have looked at these three. Okay. So as we said, the mood, it's about how you feel as the reader while you're reading the poem, and the tone, it's about the writer. Okay. So you are able to identify the tone through the use of words, punctuation, and the figurative language that the writer has used. And then from there on, you can say this is the tone, okay? And then from there on, you're able to move on to the theme and finally the speaker, okay? So I'm hoping that everybody is clear on this because today is the final day whereby I was doing poem analysis. We did this last week, but I just wanted to emphasize on certain things that I felt that you guys didn't understand from last week. Um, yeah, so just make sure that when you are analyzing poetry, you follow those elements and you are able to support your answer because it's very important as well to be able to support your answers. Okay. So if you are saying that something is a hyperbole or alliteration, you must go to the poem and quote it and say that you are saying it's a hyperbole because it is an exaggeration and it emphasized humor or it emphasized whatever it is that you think it had emphasized. Okay, so the main thing is you need to be able to read the poem, and guys, also to make sure that you understand the poem, you need to read it at least 3 times. Okay, make sure that you read the poem 3 times before you can start analyzing it. Okay, it's gonna make things easier for you and you're gonna know exactly what you are looking for. All right, that is the end of our lesson. Thank you so much for joining me. I'll make sure that tomorrow I put my details for you guys on the screen so that if you have any questions for me, we can tackle those. Otherwise, I will see you tomorrow for another lesson. Bye.